Good morning guys and welcome back to the channel. We know it's been a while. This is just going to be a short video. It's basically going to be 10 tips for anybody trekking to Everest Base Camp.
Right, so tip number one. Bit of an obvious tip, but pack light. Definitely, we were in the fortunate position where we actually, or not so fortunately, hiked all our own equipment up to base camp. Stupid or not sure, but it did save quite a lot of money if you're on a tight budget, not hiring a porter. As far as we're aware, it is normal to hire a porter to take your gear up, but if you can pack light, you could probably take it all up yourself. Light bag, light shoes, light clothes, basically anything you're not sure about, just don't take.
The recommendation we were given was not to carry any more than 7.5 to 8 kilograms. My pack did weigh 10.5, but that was mainly due to the camera equipment that we had to lug up to base camp.
And in places it was quite difficult, to be fair, carrying your own stuff. So pack light, look for the lightest things you can. Don't need loads and loads of stuff. Things like shampoos and things like that, you just don't need them. You're probably going to struggle to find a good shower anyway, so I'd say dry shampoo would be your best friend. All these little things, if you can make them lighter, go lighter.
If anybody is interested as to what we packed, we are considering doing an Everest Base Camp packing guide. If that's something you're interested, let us know in the comments and we'll do that video next. So tip number 2, wear comfortable broken-in shoes. We went to Nepal without any of the gear that we needed for the trek, so we ended up renting boots, which I got super lucky. Mine were actually really comfortable throughout the whole trip. Leanne, on the other hand, was not so lucky.
My feet are super blistered. Blisters. The blisters on my feet have took a massive beating today. Blisters are actually healing really well. Yeah, because boots were really heavy and we were obviously going away for quite a long time, I just rented boots there, and there was only one shop that we found in the whole of Tamil that rented boots that you could bring back, which was great because we didn't want to buy boots, you know, to take with us for the rest of the year. But unfortunately, they were obviously broken into somebody else's foot. And so I suffered really badly with blisters. This seems like such an easy thing to think of, but as much as we've traveled, it's not something I thought would be a major issue for some reason, but it really was. If you are going specifically to Nepal to trek and you don't have to carry, you know, boots on forevermore, take a pair of boots that you know fit your foot and that are comfortable for you. Try not to rent, would be my advice. I certainly wouldn't rent again just because of how much I did suffer. Tip number 3 would be take your own toilet paper and your own bar of soap. Not necessarily from home, unless you do have a favourite, because you can buy them very easily there, but toilet paper and soap is very expensive because they know people will need a bar of soap and they know people are going to need toilet paper.
The reason that things get so much more expensive as you get higher up is because there are no roads leading up to base camp, so everything that is needed past the likes of Lukla has to be carried by either people or by yaks. So the higher up it gets, the more difficult it is for people to get those items, so it becomes more and more expensive because they have to pay somebody obviously to carry them all the way up.
It's not an absolute necessity. You don't need toilet paper because obviously there are other ways to rinse your butt, but we are used to toilet paper, you know, in the Western world. It's something, you know, just like that little comfort that sometimes you need, especially with the spicy food. But no, in all honesty, you know, if you're used to toilet paper, it can be a bit of a shock going to a place where they don't use it routinely, especially up in the mountains. I would say with the toilet paper, there is usually a bin provided in the cubicle. Put the toilet paper in the bin, not down the toilet, because they don't tend to be able to cope with, you know, well, they're not really flushing toilets, let's just put it that way.
Yeah. The plumbing in Nepal is different to the Western world. They don't really have that many flush toilets, and the pipes that they do use are thinner, so they get clogged a lot easier than Western toilets. And so it's just not common practice to flush paper down the toilet. There's always, as Leanne says, a waste paper bin for any other little bits and bobs. Tip number 4, make sure you remember to wear sun cream. Although it can be -10 in places like Gopro and Labuche, the sun is deceiving. We got really badly sunburnt. In fact, in a few of the clips you can actually see that the skin on my nose is peeled off completely. This wasn't something I was expecting. Like, I realised that it was clear days, but I don't know. I think because in winter in the UK we don't really get burnt by the sun, I just expected it would be the same there, and it really isn't. The UV is still super high, and if you do not wear sun cream, you will get burnt. So just make sure that you layer up with sun cream.
Sun cream and a good lip balm, an SPF lip balm if you can. To be honest with you, during the EBC trek, I didn't take any lip balm and I didn't have it to hand. I think it was like packed away back at the hotel. But after we finished the EBC trek, my lips were awful. And actually when we did the Lower Mustang trek, straight after the EBC trek, I purchased lip balm and it made such a massive difference. In fact, Andrew was using it, Ram was using it, everybody was using it, because it's just so comforting to have a nice soft lip whilst you're walking. You know, it's just a good idea, and it is something I really appreciated on the Lower Mustang trek, and I would have appreciated it on the EBC trek as well. So good lip balm, ideally with SPF in it. So tip number 5, take more cash than you think you need, for sure.
We nearly got caught out. In fact, if it wasn't for Ram,
All right, lad.
and the fact that Ram knew so many people, we really would have been in trouble. So we kind of worked out what we thought we needed on the way up, and because there aren't really many cash points after Namche Bazaar, we kind of planned how much we thought we needed from Namche up to base camp and then back down. And the issue we had is that we didn't really properly take into account how much more expensive things got higher up the mountains. So by the time we reached Dingbuche on the way back down, we were very low on cash. And luckily one of Ram's friends owned one of the lodges that we stayed in, and they were able to lend us some money that we could then give back to one of their relatives in Kathmandu. But if it wasn't for this, we would have been in a heap of trouble. So we are so glad that Ram knew those people, and we're so grateful that they were able to lend us the money. But just make sure that you take more cash than you think you need. Tip number 6. There are several medications that you should probably pack with you when you actually start your trek. So the first one is Diamox. This is a high altitude medication that can help you overcome some of the symptoms of altitude sickness. You might not need to take it. In fact, we didn't have to take it at all on the trek, but it is something you should take with you just in case. The second is paracetamol, because you will develop aches and pains.
Blisters.
This will help to alleviate those basically. Number 3 is something like Diorolite or Oralite, because water contamination and food poisoning is a very real possibility on the Everest Base Camp trek. It's not something that's definitely going to happen, but it can. So something like Diorolite to help replenish salts and make you feel better is something that you should always have with you.
The other thing Ram told us about the Diorolite or the electrolytes is if you're ever having a really rough day, you know, one of them days where you've not got much energy, you're not really hungry, maybe, you know, you're above 4,000 meters, just having that electrolyte in your drink can actually give you the spare of energy that you need. And obviously it's just through a liquid, so, you know, it replenishes your salts when you're sweating and things. But it can also just give you that boost of energy that you might need when you're not really that hungry.
And last but not least would be water purification tablets, because once again, unless you're buying bottles of water, I would always recommend using water purification tablets, because the water supply up in the mountains isn't as good as we're used to here in Europe or in other Western countries. And you can pick all of these things up in Tamil and Kathmandu, so you don't need to bring them to Nepal, you can pick them all up here.
Tip number 7, go with a local guide.
Hello, namaste.
Instead of with a tour group. There are several reasons for this. Going with a local guide, I felt like we experienced so much more of the culture of Nepal. I'm not saying that guided groups, you don't get that experience. They're obviously amazing. Some people do better in a big group as well, you know, with other people spurring them on. The only issue I would say with a huge group, and we met quite a few groups on the way up, and we spoke to quite a few groups, is that not everybody's the same. Some people are going to be slower, some people are going to get poorly, some people are going to suffer more, and you might be absolutely fine, or you could be that person suffering. Either way, it's going to affect the group. We met so many groups where they'd had to split up and then wait for people, or go ahead and then wait for people. And yeah, I think those people didn't realise that actually you could go with a private guide. Now, I know what you're thinking. A private guide's going to be way more expensive than a group, but it actually tends to be the opposite. Seeking out a private guide from someone ideally that actually lives in Nepal and has trekked in Nepal usually works out cheaper. Well, it did for us anyway. And again, we met people who had gone with private guides, and it's totally tailored to you then. If you can't go for whatever reason one day and you need a break, not a problem. If you need to change something, or if you want to go somewhere that, you know, you don't normally go to, you know, with a big group, that's fine. You know, our guide especially, you know, we can't recommend him enough. He was really life-changing for us, and he was recommended through a couple that we actually met in Spain. So we feel really, really lucky to have been put in contact with him. He was great. If anybody, you know, wants his contact details or anything, we can't recommend him highly enough. He's a local man. He's lived in Nepal all his life. But yeah, if anybody wants any information about Ram, just send us a message. We're more than happy to pass his details on.
We'll also leave his contact info in the description down below. So if you want to check Ram out, his details are down below.
That's good. Thank you.
Tip number 8. Become a vegetarian for 2 weeks. Along the whole EBC, you will see meat on the menu. However, I would not recommend, especially with most people flying into Lukla, I would just recommend that you become a vegetarian for the entire 2 weeks you're on the trek. For anybody who decides to walk up into and past Lukla, I would recommend that the second you hit Lukla, you just stop eating meat. Now, this is purely because of logistics. So once you get to Lukla, as I mentioned, there are no roads. So everything then has to be carried by people or by yaks. This means that anything that reaches the likes of Lukla has been in Kathmandu to begin with and then flown to Lukla. So you're looking at least it being a day old with no refrigeration. Once you get to the likes of Phading or Bengkar, it's at least 2 days old with no refrigeration. Once it gets to Namche, it's at least 3. Past that to like Tengbuche or Debuche, it's 4 days. In Dingbuche, it's 5 days. Once you get up to Everest Base Camp, any meat that is on a menu is likely to be at least a week old with no refrigeration. So for safety reasons, I would just skip meat for the entire 2 weeks that you're on the Everest Base Camp trek. But don't worry, there's still a big selection of things that you can eat. There are plenty of vegetarian dishes like dal bhat, like momos, so there is enough for you to eat. Just skip the meat.
Tip number 9. I understand this one's probably not doable for everybody. Give yourself a few days either side of the trek. Obviously, when you get into Kathmandu, if you're going from Kathmandu, you're going to want to get a couple of little things together. You're going to want to explore Kathmandu as well. It's, you know, it's a great city. There's lots of things to see and do. Give yourself, you know, I'd say 48 hours or so to get yourself ready and prepared, stretched. You know, get yourself a map or something. That's what we did. We went out and bought a huge map. You know, we sat down with the guide and we drew on the map all the little places we were going to go day by day. And it's a lovely experience, you know, but not only that, a couple of days the other way as well. When you finish your trek, you'll most likely be flying out of Lukla airport. Unfortunately, Lukla does experience, just naturally, some bad weather from time to time being that high up. Definitely, you know, low-lying clouds, thunderstorms, rain, everything like that. And it is quite a dangerous airport to fly out of and into. So they just don't take the risk. If the weather's bad, you're not going to be flying. And we did see this actually when we arrived in Lukla. There were a couple that had been there for a few days. Because of bad weather, you know, the plane, they just wouldn't take the plane out of the airport. Which, you know, is fair enough. Obviously, they have to put safety first, but a lot of people don't realise that you can actually be stuck in Lukla, you know, up to a week. We've heard more sometimes. Quite rare to be stuck more than a week, I'd say. But if you haven't accounted for this, you know, you might not be making your flight back home either. So be prepared, you know, for a day or so wait. We got really, really lucky again, and we did fly out, you know, the day after we arrived, which was on schedule, but it definitely doesn't always work out like that. So be prepared, you know, to be delayed at Lukla.
Yeah. Tip number 10, take your time and listen to your body. So this kind of draws back into having a private guide. We saw so many people who were suffering with high altitude sickness on the trek. We were really lucky. We didn't really suffer with anything serious on our trek. Leanne did suffer with a bit of a headache on the last day after we made base camp, but we saw so many people who had like severe headaches. Some people had nausea and vomiting. We saw a couple of people pass out, or at least I did on the way up to Kalapatar. So just listen to your body. If you start feeling really, really ill, maybe extend your stay in one of the towns for an extra day. Once again, this is something that might not be possible if you're with an organised group, but if you are with a guide, just stay an extra day. Also, if you are pushing for Everest Base Camp and you do start to feel really ill, don't try and be a hero. Just I know it's heartbreaking, but if you are starting to feel really ill, you may have to turn around and come back. Altitude affects everybody differently. Once again, we were really lucky, but some people unfortunately just can't make it, and it's just one of those things that you have to accept, unfortunately. If you do try and rush things, you're just not going to enjoy the experience, and there is so much to see and experience in these little towns anyway, that even if you do have to spend an extra day in these towns, you're not going to regret it, because there's so many things you can see.
Yeah, listen to your body. Everybody's different. Enjoy the experience. It's easy to just march towards your goal, isn't it? And forget actually what's around you. It's a bit hard to forget what's around you when you're in the Himalayas, honestly, because it's so beautiful. But enjoy every day, because you might get to a point where you can't go on anymore, and that's fine. We did see quite a lot of people turning back. A lot of people coming back down on horses that looked really, really poorly. A lot of people coming back in helicopters. You know, it is a real thing. So yeah, listen to your body, you know, don't be a hero. Don't march towards that goal and think that that's all of it. Enjoy the time you're spending around the Himalayas. You know, it's beautiful. Enjoy yourself on the way up, okay? So officially that is the end of this video. I hope you found it useful a little bit. They're just our personal 10 tips. Everybody's going to be different every time they go. You'll probably have your own tips as well. But as a little extra juicy bonus tip, just a super important piece of equipment that I actually ended up purchasing in Kathmandu before the trek, I never thought it would be as useful as it was actually a buff. So for those of you who don't know what a buff is, it's basically a piece of material that goes around your neck, and it is so useful. It stops dust going down your top. I used it as a mask to stop dust going in my nose and in my mouth. I used it as a headband to stop the sun getting on my head. I used it as a washcloth because, you know, you don't think of these things really. And it was a multi-use piece of equipment. Honestly, it was invaluable. It was not that expensive, and we used it for like everything, didn't we?
Yeah.
Literally everything. So get yourself a buff. It was really, really useful for me, really handy and inexpensive and very light.
So that is it, guys. That is the end of the video. We hope that you found some of these tips useful in the video. Quickly, we want to say a huge thank you to everybody that made our base camp trip possible. Thank you to Ram for being such an incredible guide. As I said earlier, we'll leave his details down below if anybody wants to get in touch with him. Thank you to Moses and Yolanda, who recommended Ram and kind of pushed us to do this Everest Base Camp trek. If it wasn't for you guys, we probably never would have gone on this trip, and it has honestly probably been a life-changing trip for us. It's something I've wanted to do for years, and I can't believe that I've finally done it, that we've both finally done it. It's been incredible. We do want to do, as I say, an Everest Base Camp packing guide. If it's something you're interested in, let us know below. We're thinking about doing a packing guide for long-term travel. We're thinking about doing a camera kit run through as to what we use, because there's some things we want to change, there's some things we're really happy with. We'd also say, if you guys have any questions at all, do not hesitate to put them down in the comments. We try to answer every single question. If you enjoyed the videos, Please subscribe, it helps the channel out a huge amount. And also follow us on Instagram. We tend to upload, especially when we're traveling, we upload daily stories and we upload pictures of our journey. And follow us on TikTok. We need to show it some more love, but it's something we're definitely going to try and do.
We're still learning.
It's something we're going to try and do while we're traveling. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.